Hi, this is Sarah Clark, and this is for my, let me check that I say the name correctly, sorry, uh, Evaluation and Testing in Higher Ed, Week 1 course. And per the conversation that we had through email, one of my interviews is not in person, it is actually through an email. So I interviewed 4 educators. I was not able to get my administrator to respond, and 3 of the 4 educators are actually early primary, so either kindergarten or first grade teachers. Both have taught, all 3 rather, have taught over 30 years and have a lot of experience in assessment, and I was extremely curious as to how they would respond to these questions. And another educator that I interviewed is a newer teacher. She's only taught a couple of years, and she is a secondary special education teacher. And so her answers were a little bit different, and I don't know if that was because she's a newer teacher, and so her experience in Teachers College is a lot more recent, or if it's because of the population of students that she serves. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll start with Connie. Connie was unwilling to be recorded, either her voice or her face. So per our agreement, I will just read you her response. When asked what is assessment, and maybe I will show you, not very good at working this. Whoops, maybe not. What is assessment? She said the evaluation or estimation of student progress, but my definition is, did my students learn what I taught and wanted them to learn? It's a little more personal to me. So number 2, asking Connie, what components do you believe are present in assessment? And Connie said, can the student show evidence of my teaching? Can the student perform the skill taught over time? Can the student explain the skill to someone else? The third one, what value do you find in assessment? Connie said, depends on who the assessment is for. Everyone teaches the subject matter differently, so my own assessment made by me are more relevant to me. However, district state assessments mean more to them. The key is to make what I am teaching and the way I teach the same for all assessments, but will it ever? Also, if the people making the assessments aren't familiar with developmental appropriateness, is that data relevant? And what I can tell you about that response is that Connie is a first grade teacher and has taught first grade for over 30 years, and we find in early primary that a lot of times assessments that are designed for every student oftentimes are not appropriate for a younger crowd, and I know that this class in particular is focusing on higher ed, but unfortunately I work with elementary, so this is a lot of what I got. So her viewpoint's a little different. A lot of times in early primary, the assessments feel really inappropriate. Number 4, what do you measure in assessment? I measure what I taught and how I taught it, keeping in mind the district or state way as well, but you need to be familiar with how it is assessed elsewhere. Number 5, how is online assessment different from face-to-face assessment? She says, no comparison. Seeing the student face-to-face is imperative. Of course, I am talking primary kiddos, body language, family history, attendance, health, personality, disabilities, and everything else that makes up the child is more important than them doing a computerized test. So, real quick, before I end up shifting over to the rest of the actual video interviews, I wanted to respond to the prompts that were in the discussion thread. Did the responses align with resources I read this week? Yes, Lillian. And yes and no. 2 of the 4 ladies that I interviewed have not been in school in a very, very, very long time. And as far as current outlooks and assessment, their thoughts are a little bit different. So I know that in our school, Isabel, who is one of the ladies that I interviewed, and myself, we are on the Guiding Coalition. So we work with other teachers, K-12, and in putting together these new systems. And so we're a little bit more caught up. Cassie Erkins, who is one of the authors that I utilize often in my work. Cassie Erkins, she's working with our school in person. We've attended one of her workshops, and then I use her work a lot when I'm writing about assessments or investigating how to use assessments, formative and summative assessments, as far as the most effective way to use assessments. And so when I was asking these questions, especially of Isabel, I noticed that a lot of her responses reflected that information. Chrissy was a little more modern, but like I said, she's only taught, this is just her second year. So the idea of using formative assessments more often in order to find out where your students are and make choices to move forward, that was really popular through Popham as well as Erkins. I saw that a lot in Killian's work, as well as Stigler. You see that often. So she was a little more modern at that point, but Connie and Lori, amazing teachers, they're learning. It's new to them, and this is a direction that our district has taken, so they have to learn with everybody else. And the next question was, what realizations did I have after conducting and reflecting on the interviews? I learned that despite being in college, I don't know a lot about college assessment. And I think that probably has a lot to do with the fact that my experience being in college or attending a university, especially online, the majority of it has been online, is that you just take the test, whatever is offered to you. And a lot of times it's multiple choice, or it's like a performance sort of assessment where you're writing an essay. And so it's black and white. It's one thing or another. It's either correct or incorrect. So I haven't put a lot of thought into it or what assessment could be in the classroom, especially face-to-face. And I never really considered online assessment very much. This whole COVID-19 thing has completely changed the way I look at teaching and the way that I look at assessment. How do you assess somebody when you're not face-to-face? How do you put together an assessment when they're in another room? What if you can't? Can I get the same kind of data from a paper and pencil test that they take on a computer as I can if I'm staring at them and asking them questions and guiding them? So what I learned from this week is that I don't know enough about it, and I need to ask a lot of questions and have conversations with people who do. And so I'm finding generally in this program is that a lot of the teachers that I'm in these cohorts with, they are in higher education. So I'm really excited to learn more from them, because I think that it's important as a person working in the Guiding Coalition that I'm able to give that information to some of my secondary teachers and the administrators, so that we are supporting our secondary students in preparing for college and what those assessments could look like. So the next 3 videos are going to be Isabel, who is a kindergarten teacher, Lori, who is also a kindergarten teacher but was previously a first grade teacher, and then my lovely friend Chrissy, who is a secondary special education teacher. And here we go. So my first question is, what is assessment?
Assessment is the ability to learn where your students are functioning at, what level they are. They can be oral assessments, they can be group assessments, they can be paper and pencil assessments, they can be video assessments, they can be a task. It could be just about anything, but it's a way of gauging what your students are able to do and what they have learned.
Awesome. What components do you believe are present in assessment?
What do you mean by components?
So, I don't know. I would say like what pieces, like instruction or student engagement, or it's very vague.
Okay, so repeat the question again.
What components do you believe are present in assessment? So, do you believe there are
I
different
believe
parts?
the components that are present in assessment can be a variety of things. They can be verbal components, they can be visual components, they can be, you know, like a showing, like an acting out. They can be a paper and pencil or a computer task. It can be a product, you know, baking a cake, building a tree house, planting a garden.
Fantastic. Thank you. What value do you find in assessments?
I find a lot of value in assessments because it helps my students to see how much they've grown in a particular standard. You know, if at the beginning of the year they knew 3-letter names and I assess them, you know, 2 weeks later from the beginning of the year, and all of a sudden they know 7 letters, and then being able to, you know, show them you used to know this and now you know that, and it gives them a great feeling of pride. So I think it's wonderful for my instruction on knowing what the next steps are, but it's also wonderful for them to experience that growth.
Oh, I love that you talked
A lot
about
of
it on
ownership.
them. I think that's perfect. What do you measure in an assessment?
I measure growth.
You measure growth. And the last question, how is online assessment different from face-to-face assessment?
Well, you know, it really depends, in my opinion, on the age and the developmental level of the student. So I find developmentally, the younger the child, the less they are able to connect with what the task is online that's being asked of them to the reality of where they are, because they're so egocentric when they're young. So if the child, say, for example, is very fond of soccer and they see soccer balls on a screen, they might get so excited that they might not attend to the fact that the question is asking you to sort the small soccer balls and the large soccer balls, even though they would be able to sort if they were not online. Being able to sort online, looking at the soccer ball sizes, they would not be able to do. They'd want to click on all the soccer balls because they like soccer balls so much. Or if you have, you know, maybe they're very fond of pizza and you have, you know, 2 slices of pepperoni and pizza, and then you have, you know, 3 more slices, and all they can think about is pepperoni pizza. They can't really, you know, fathom that you're asking how many, you know, pieces of pepperoni. So really, I think a lot of online assessments, the older the student is and the more comfortable they are working online, the more valid the assessment is.
That's perfect. I think it's going. Okay, it's only 6 questions. Kat, get out of the screen. What is assessment?
Assessment is an instrument that is used to let me know how the student what the student has learned and if they're having any concerns or problems.
Awesome.
They've mastered.
What components do you believe are present in assessments?
In it, not take off the whole roof.
The components I believe that are present in assessments are what the students have learned, if the students can focus, and I believe that it lets you know exactly what they have learned and what they need more help with.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. What value do you find in assessment?
I find what the students know and don't know, and it allows me to either regroup and retest. It allows me to reteach. It allows me to make individual groups so that I can RTI my students and teach to their level and or get exactly what they are lacking in order to succeed.
What do you measure in an assessment?
I measure their learning. I measure their many things. If it's a written test, I measure their handwriting. I measure their attendance. I measure the curriculum and my teaching.
And last question, how is online assessment different from face-to-face assessment?
Well, I don't know if students are doing them completely on their own. I don't know if they're just guessing because they can, whereas if it's the test in front of me, I can see what they're doing, writing or not doing. I really can't talk to them about their responses. So that is a challenge right now to know what they know. I hope for the best, and I just keep pushing forward.
Thank you.
All right, first question is, what is assessment?
Assessment are tools that, if we're going to talk about education, in education, assessment are tools that we use to gauge where our children or our students are at, and that can be academically, that can be emotionally. Assessment can be anywhere from formative to summative, just questioning what they know or how much they want to know is assessment.
Beautiful.
Is that good?
Yeah, and I like how you discuss how assessment is more than just academics. I think that's important. What
It is.
what components do you believe are?
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's my whole life. I know it's yours too. What components do you believe are present
Right.
in assessment? I don't know if you heard that question. There's a little bit of a lag. What
I did.
Okay.
Sorry, no, I did. What components do I believe are
present
in
in
assessment?
assessment?
Okay, so there's definitely a norm of some sort. Whatever that norm is, there's some sort of norm. So like if I was doing an emotional check-in, I would know that on a regular basis they were this way, but they're a little off today, so I'm going to be doing a quick assessment of their needs. So there is some sort of like norm of like a base, and then there's a target. What's the target? What are we trying to find? What are we trying to get to? What is the standard? And then coming back around and actually using that assessment to understand it. So using the data from whatever that assessment is to figure out what's going on and move forward. So those are like the components of assessment for me.
Awesome. What value do you find in assessment?
Wow, that's because it really just depends on the assessment, doesn't it? Wow, it depends on the assessment. Because of the students I work with, standardized norm testing is for me is, I don't feel it's as necessary as maybe doing a KWL. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that I don't know. That's a hard one. It depends on the assessment. It depends on what it's for. Like what and if anything's being done with the data. Like it doesn't matter. You can assess that, but if nothing's being done with the data, then it's for naught.
Wouldn't you
If
say
you're not doing anything with it,
right? Wouldn't you say that a KWL can be kind of an assessment though, like a formative assessment? You're finding out what your students already know, so you know then how to
what do
move
they
forward.
know? What do they want to know?
Right.
Right. So like if I already know that they know this, then I already know where to go with this. But if a good chunk of them do not know, or they want to know more, then I know where I need to guide the education.
This is an
That's what that's for. But that was just like,
This is not on the list, but for me to clarify, because your students in particular they're so high, their needs are so high. It's very specialized.
yes.
Do you think that that is a variable in your assessment? So you're not just going to plop down a math test and say, hey, let's see how well you add to 10?
Oh, absolutely. No, because it definitely needs to be scaled down.
Right.
And where their age level is and their grade level might be here,
Right.
but their achievement level is here. It's
Yeah.
like way down here. You need to scale it way back and make the goals attainable, which should be done for all kids anyways. It doesn't need to be so big. It needs to be brought down to their level,
Do you make it very focused
and
then
it's not that complicated.
for your kids, like a very narrowed
Yes,
focus every
very-
assessment?
Yes, it's very targeted with the exception of the state testing.
Yeah, that's great. What do you measure
That is
in an
the only
assessment?
assessments that I do.
Oh, yes. Right. You can't really play with the state one.
I measure,
Okay.
right. What do I measure?
Yes. What do
I
you
measure
measure?
gains. Honestly, the biggest thing, I measure gains. I literally measure gains. I first off, because baseline is where I need to know where I'm at. And then with any assessment, and then I'm measuring gains, moving forward and regression. I'm trying to really focus in what the issue is and move on from there.
Just
I
trying
don't
to
know
get
if
that
that
data.
makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. It sounds like you just want to see where they've learned so that you know where to go next. Like guides instruction.
Right, but I need to know where they're at. And I think as a special education teacher,
Keep looking there. Don't stop.
that is special teachers are really good at, and I'm still working on being really good at it, but in my experience with working with them, is they're really good at taking data from the assessments and applying.
Absolutely.
Where something that's not very like in a general ed setting, everybody loves to see the data, but they don't necessarily know where to go from there or how to shrink it down and target the meat and the potatoes of whatever they're looking for. And that's something that special ed teachers are like trained for. That's just what they do. They have to do that.
I have to agree with you on that because
So,
I know working with
That's why everything's just
right, absolutely. When I work with other teachers about narrowing down their assessments because they're huge, it's like they're testing for 20 different things.
right.
And they're wondering why their kids aren't successful. It's like, oh my gosh, how many learning targets are we going for here? Let's focus a little
Right.
bit. And special education teachers are so good at
Right.
that because they have to.
Right, because if you're just focusing on one or two targets, you can get to that target in 30 different ways. Right? So that way you're finding out which kids actually do have mastery, which kids actually do need to move on or actually hold back, because you're really targeting in a variety the same target, the same thing. It's not like all across the board, because I've seen those assessments too where I'm like, well, no one the kid freaked out. This is too much. You're trying to pound too much information in instead of just really pounding in 2 pieces of information really, really good.
Right. No, I agree. All right, last question. How is online assessment different from face-to-face assessment?
The students or with myself?
You know what? Actually, let's hear both. Because you're a college student, and so I would love to hear your perception of as a college student how online assessment is different for you. And I would also love to hear as a special education student working with really high needs kids how online assessment, if you assess or they're just formative assessments, how that is. I think that's interesting.
Right.
For school.
First off, you have to gauge the child's ability level. So with the kids I work with, depending on their ability level, like I have one student, if I read everything to her and tell her what they are, she can make an answer, and she knows how to guide a mouse, and she knows, so for online, that type of stuff, great. But that also means that for students that are going to need, in a special ed any student actually, they're going to need to have a certain technology knowledge. They're going to have a level of technology knowledge, and then they're going to have to be able to do it independently or have enough support to be able to do it online. So in the classroom, when I'm doing any assessments that might be online, I'm with my student, and we have, because I do some assessments online, some beginning of the month and end of the month assessments, just to see if they got anything from the curriculum. And I'm sitting right there with them and guiding them through it. And for my students, it took 6 months to get them to independently push the button on the question themselves. So it really just depends on how tech savvy the kids are, how willing they are to do it, and then if they just click happy. I can think of one student in particular for the last however many years, he just clicks whatever. If there's no value in it for them, they're not going to do it. I'm really thinking of, I don't want to say it because I know I'm being recorded,
Right.
but I'm really thinking of a certain high school student who's just been click happy since I've known him, since fourth grade. And I'm like, can't get a good idea. Now, as a college student, I like assessing technology.
Yeah.
I really do. I like being able to get in and get out of there and move on.
Right. And the feedback can be a lot quicker, would you say? Because everything's
Is
scored,
Yeah.
which is really nice. I totally agree with you, though, when
Yes,
you're talking about click-happy students, because I know in my classroom, I have...
Oh, man.
They pick their answer based on which picture was prettiest, whether they knew the answer or not.
Right. Or
So-
whether or not they recognize the difference between a rhinoceros and hippo. Like, you know what I mean? They're just like, if they recognize it and understand that, oh, that's a rhinoceros. I don't know what that is, so that must be the wrong answer. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, they don't know. So it really depends on the tech savviness and the value of it, what the value is for the kid.
So what do you think is specifically different as a college student between being online and face-to-face? Because I know that there were some assessments that you had to take for your degree that you had to go in and sit down and take the test versus just being in your house.
But they were still assessments. But they were still online assessments.
There were, you just had to be in a building. Gosh, you
I
know
just
what?
had to
I don't know
doctor.
they do it hardly anymore. I'm wondering if like brick and mortar schools, if it's still online, or I guess you would go down and sit in a classroom and hand a
Well,
piece
don't
of
you
paper.
remember, like at the beginning of my college back in the day, because I mean, we're both, the same age, same graduating class. I remember sitting in classes and having to bubble,
Yes, the Scantrons.
like bubbling assessments, and they would put it in the machine.
Right.
Thank you. I couldn't think of what it was called. It's been so long.
Yes.
So, I felt like that, if we still had to do that, that would be lame.
That's
So
how-
it's
my
gone to
West
some
B.
sort of like online. Yeah.
And it took forever to find out. My West B, when I first started this process, was fill in a bubble of Scantron, hand write out all my essays for that part of my teaching cert. And it took forever to get
Yes.
any kind of feedback. I was like, did I pass? Is this done? Do I need to
Okay.
do it again? Oh, yeah, you're going all the way now.
Right. I am going all the way now, and only because I'm not in the staff meeting.
Mm-hmm. No, but I'm with you. I think that when you do things online, especially
Okay.
as an adult, it's just fast.
It is fast, and I also think there's a difference too, like as a college student versus being even a high school. Even the seniors, I have paid for my education. My education is costing me money.
Right?
My education is going to make me more money,
Yeah.
supposedly.
That's what they tell us.
So I think I am more right. That's what they say. But I think that makes me more vested into testing as a versus testing as like little kids don't get it. They don't get it. It's not just a test. It means nothing. Whether they pass or fail, in all honesty, your little ones, it means nothing to them. They're just happy little kids.
So then you're saying then
And
that,
the bigger kids.
oh, I'm sorry. This lag is
No, go
hard.
ahead.
So you're saying then that motivation affects your response and your commitment to your assessment,
Thank you.
because you're highly
Thank
motivated
you.
to
That's
do well.
Right. What value does it have for me? What does it, what is it giving me?
Awesome.
And that's,
One last part, I forgot to post my resources. So these are the 5 resources outside of our textbook, which is only just come in the mail. So I'm a bit behind there, that I've used this week for my learning and that I was referring to in my video.